I remember my wedding day as if it were today. The white dress, his smile, the soft music playing in the background, everyone's eyes fixed on us. I felt beautiful, loved, almost happy. But it was an almost that no one noticed, an emptiness, hidden behind every practiced smile. As I said yes at the altar, my eyes didn't see that man. They saw her. That woman who, years before, had taught me what it felt like to have my heart race just by hearing a laugh, what it was like to have my hands tremble at the mere thought of a touch. But in that moment, applauded and celebrated by everyone, I could only think about how impossible it would be to live that truth. The world wouldn't know, I couldn't. But the truth, oh, the truth always finds a way to escape. I met her when I was 17. She was my sister's older friend, a few years ahead of me, full of plans, dreams, and a courage that captivated me. She was 23 and carried in her eyes a freedom I had never known. I, naive, felt so small next to her, yet every gesture, every word she uttered imprinted itself upon me. I remember the first time I felt that strange chill in my stomach, as if the world had paused just to show me there was something beyond everything I knew. But I was just a confused teenager, and she seemed so distant. So I kept that feeling locked inside me, like a secret no one could ever discover. Years passed, and I followed what everyone said was the right path. College, a job, a stable relationship, an engagement perfect in the eyes of my family. He was kind, attentive, a man any woman would consider a catch. But with every kiss, every embrace, I felt her absence like a constant shadow, like a wound that wouldn't heal. I told myself it was a phase, that it was all in my head, that marrying him and building a life by his side would erase any doubts. Yet when the silence of the night enveloped me, her image returned powerfully, and I wondered if I could ever truly live without that part of me that only she could touch. Life has a strange way of confronting us with what we try hardest to conceal. Months after the wedding, during an ordinary dinner, she appeared. Years had gone by, but when our eyes met, everything flooded back in a single second. The noise of conversations around us faded, and only that instant existed. The scent of her, perfume, the way her hair cascaded over her shoulders, the shy smile that seemed to carry so many untold stories. My heart pounded so fiercely, I feared everyone around would hear it. She embraced me like one reuniting with an old friend, but I knew that in that touch, there was far more than mere friendship. I blamed myself for days after that reunion, guilty for desiring someone who wasn't my husband, for thinking of her when I lay in bed beside him. But simultaneously, there was something impossible to control, a flame that had never truly extinguished. I avoided my phone so as not to see the messages we exchanged, yet every word from her was like a magnet, pulling me to a place where, for the first time, I felt alive. It was as if, after so many years of silence, my heart was screaming, imploring to be heard. Have you ever felt this? That sensation of losing yourself and finding yourself all at once? Comment below if you've experienced something similar. And if this story has captivated you so far, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow every detail of this narrative. Want to know what happened after that reunion? Get ready, because this is where everything begins to change. That night, after the reunion, I couldn't sleep. Her every word echoed in my mind. Every gesture seemed etched onto my skin. I closed my eyes and for an instant reverted to that 17-year-old girl, looking at her with a mix of fear and fascination. The difference was that now I was an adult, married, with a life that seemed perfect in the eyes of others, but which internally was already starting to crumble. The silence of the room, the faint hum of the fan, my husband's scent lingering on the pillow. Everything seemed to suffocate me. I felt as though I was betraying someone, yet at the same time, I couldn't ignore what was stirring within me. It was as if, after years, My soul was weary of pretending. The following days were a blend of anxiety and guilt. Every message that arrived on my phone made me smile and tremble simultaneously. "Hey, stranger," she wrote one ordinary day, as if unaware of the impact those words would have on me. I took hours to reply, attempting to be casual, but inside, a whirlwind was building. And when we finally arranged to meet for coffee, everything I had tried to bury resurfaced. She was there, seated at a small cafe table, wearing a blue dress that seemed handpicked for that very moment. The aroma of fresh coffee, the sound of rain tapping against the windows, the soft light of late afternoon. Everything conspired to make me feel that this encounter was no mere coincidence. We conversed as if no years had passed, as if time had waited for us. She spoke about her life, about the paths she had taken, and I listened to every word as if trying to reclaim the years I had been apart. But simultaneously, a part of me screamed that I couldn't be there, that I had a husband, a home, a life built on a lie I myself had helped sustain. And it was when she held my hand, in a light, almost imperceptible way, that I realized there was no turning back. Her touch ignited something that had never ceased to exist. It was impossible to keep denying it. My body, my mind, my heart, everything screamed her name. From that day forward, each encounter was a deeper dive. I invented excuses, lies that gnawed at me from within, but which were the only way to experience those moments with her. We met in discreet places, hidden cafes, nearly empty parks. She had a way of looking at me that made me forget everything, who I was supposed to be. And amidst all this, an immense fear grew. Fear of someone discovering us, fear of hurting my husband, fear of confronting the reality I had avoided for so long. But more than fear, there was a longing to finally be myself, without masks, without pretense. Her messages became my routine. A good morning that made me smile in traffic, a thinking of you that made my world tilt. I was living a double life, divided between the perfect world everyone saw and the intense chaos I concealed. At night, lying beside him, I felt like a fraud. During the day, by her side, I felt alive. It was a contrast that consumed me, yet simultaneously gave me a reason to go on. I knew I was at a crossroads, that sooner or later I would have to choose. But how does one choose between the security of a stable life and the intensity of a love that burned everything around it? One afternoon, as we walked together down a nearly deserted street, she stopped, gently held my face and said, "I don't want to hurt you, but I also can't leave you." It was at that instant I realized this wasn't just a fleeting passion. It was love. A love that had spanned years, resisted silence, and survived the passage of time. And in that moment, I knew that no matter how much it pained me, I could no longer pretend I didn't feel it. My heart had always been hers, and the more I tried to deny it, the louder it cried out for freedom. Have you ever felt trapped between what the world expects of you and what your heart truly desires? Leave your comment. I want to know if this story resonates with you too. And stay with me. Life is about to present us with a choice that will change everything. I remember the exact night everything changed. I arrived home later than usual, after a meeting with her that was supposed to be quick, just coffee, just a few words, but ended with an embrace that lingered too long, a silence that spoke volumes, and a stolen kiss that made the world stand still. I walked through the living room door with trembling hands, trying to hide my face, trying to disguise that something within me had changed forever. He looked at me with a tired smile, one of those that doesn't perceive that the life around has already begun to crumble. I responded with a kiss on his cheek, automatic, cold, almost mechanical, and went up to the bedroom, carrying a guilt that seemed to crush me. In the mirror, I saw the reflection of a woman divided between two lives, between what her heart yearned for and what reason commanded her to suppress. In the following days, I tried to convince myself that kiss meant nothing, that it was just a moment of weakness, a lapse that could be buried along with all my hidden feelings. But just one message from her, a call with that soft hello, was enough to make all my walls tumble down. With each encounter, the world around me seemed grayer when I wasn't with her. His laughter no longer echoed through the house as it once had. Dinners felt quieter, touches more distant. I was there, yet I wasn't. My heart had already chosen, even if my mind still tried to fight against the inevitability of that truth. I remember the scent of her apartment, a blend of fresh coffee with the sweet perfume she always wore. It was like an invisible embrace that enveloped me as soon as I crossed the threshold. We'd spend hours talking, sometimes without saying anything at all, just listening to each other's breathing, as if that silence were more honest than any words. I felt whole there, as if I could finally be myself, without fear, without masks. But simultaneously, there was a weight, a countdown I didn't want to hear, because I knew I couldn't live forever between two worlds. It was on a rainy afternoon that she spoke the words I most dreaded hearing. I can't share you anymore. I need all of you, but I know asking that is selfish. Her words cut through me like a blade. I wanted to say I'd leave everything, that I wouldn't live another day without her, but fear paralyzed me. Fear of hurting him, fear of judgment, fear of losing myself in the chaos that choice would bring. But simultaneously, every second away from her was a torment. I was trapped in a labyrinth with no exit, running from a truth that caught up to me with every heartbeat. Messages that once were full of lightness began to take on a different tone. "Are you okay?" she'd ask, and I'd reply yes, even though I knew it was a lie. She knew, of course she knew, and deep down, I also knew that the invisible thread connecting us was becoming increasingly impossible to ignore, until one day, without warning, she told me, "I don't want to lose you, but I don't know how much longer I can stay like this." It was like an earthquake. I spent the entire night awake, staring at the ceiling, with tears I didn't know were from fear, from love, or both at once. When dawn broke, I knew something had to change. The weight of the lie was consuming me, and I no longer wanted to live half a life. But simultaneously, courage seemed a luxury I didn't possess. So I did what I always did. I pretended. I smiled during breakfast, talked about the future, about trips I knew we would never take. But inside, I was no longer present. Have you ever felt at your limit, as if you were about to explode, yet without knowing which direction to take? If so, tell me in the comments. Your story might help others who also feel trapped. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, take a moment to subscribe now, because in the next chapter, a turning point will change everything, and you won't want to miss it. The turning point arrived on a Sunday, as if the universe had decided it was time to strip away my masks once and for all. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, when I heard a notification on his phone. It was a simple message, but with a name that sent a chill through my body. Her name. He saw it before me, grabbed the phone, furrowed his brow, and asked, in a cold tone I'd never heard, "Who is this woman calling you my love?" The world stopped. I didn't know whether to run, to deny, to scream. I just stood there, hands trembling, feeling the ground disappear beneath my feet. He didn't wait for an answer. He started shouting, demanding explanations, and his every word was a blow, reminding me how far I had let things go. That night, the house that once felt so familiar became a war zone. He accused me of destroying everything, of being ungrateful, of choosing to ruin a perfect life. I, in silence, thought only of her, of how much I longed to be in her arms, far from that chaos, far from the crushing judgment. When I finally locked myself in the bedroom, tears came like a tempest. I didn't know how to face anyone, didn't know how to explain that it wasn't just any betrayal, not a fleeting fancy. It was love, a love that had always been there, quiet, waiting for the right moment to consume me entirely. In the following days, the atmosphere was unbearable. He wouldn't speak to me, wouldn't look me in the eyes, and his every silence was heavier than 1,000 words. I tried to explain, tried to say I never meant to hurt him, that I never planned any of this. But how does one explain the unexplainable? How does one translate what I felt for her without seeming cruel? And deep down, I knew there was no turning back, that the life I had built was crumbling, and perhaps that was necessary. It was then that she appeared at my doorstep, under a fine rain, her wet hair clinging to her face, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and love. "I couldn't stay away," she said, almost a whisper. In that moment, everything else lost its importance. I embraced her as if that gesture could silence the entire world. I felt her scent, her skin cold from the night chill, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt at home. She asked nothing, demanded nothing. She just stayed there, holding me, as if she understood that the chaos surrounding us was small compared to what we felt. It was difficult. The judging glances, the whispered conversations, the unsolicited advice from people who would never understand. My family called me every day, trying to convince me to save my marriage, as if I were throwing away a perfect life. But the truth was, I didn't want to save something that was never real. For the first time, I was choosing myself, even if it meant facing the entire world. She was my anchor in the storm. When I broke down, saying I couldn't bear the stairs any longer, she held my face, looked into my eyes, and said, "You deserve to be happy, even if it takes time, even if it hurts. Now." And somehow those words gave me strength. I began to understand that love was also courage, that sometimes it was necessary to destroy everything in order to finally start anew. It was in this process of rebuilding that I learned a great deal about myself. I learned that true love doesn't ask for permission, that it arrives and transforms everything, that it doesn't fit into patterns or expectations. And above all, I learned that life is too short to be lived halfway. And you? Have you ever had to choose between what seemed right and what your heart cried out was true? Share your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is about us, about courage, about new beginnings. And if this story is touching you, go ahead and hit the like button to support the channel, because the conclusion is coming, and it will move you in ways you can't imagine. The day I decided to leave was one of the quietest of my life. There were no shouts, no endless arguments, just a dense, heavy silence that filled every corner of the house. I packed my belongings slowly, each piece of clothing tucked away as if it were an unspoken apology. He stood by the door, his eyes red, and for the first time, I truly saw the pain my decision was causing. I tried to speak, to explain that it wasn't about him, that it had never been about a lack of love, but about a different, profound love I could no longer deny. But the words wouldn't come out. He simply nodded, like someone who finally understands. It's futile to fight against something that cannot be changed. I left the house that had once been our home with trembling hands and a heart that pounded erratically. On the way, the city seemed transformed. The noise of cars, the aroma of bread wafting from the corner bakery, the sky painted in orange hues at dusk. Everything felt like a new beginning, a silent announcement that, despite all the pain, something fresh was about to be born. When I arrived at her building, my legs gave way. I knocked on the door, and when she opened it, that shy smile, that gaze that always disarmed me, was all I needed to be certain. I was exactly where I was meant to be. The first few months weren't easy. The weight of judgment still lingered. Friends who disappeared, family members who didn't understand, gazes laden with disapproval at every turn. But simultaneously, there was a newfound lightness in my life. I could wake up every day knowing I was no longer living a lie, that I could hold her hand in public, feel the warmth of that love without needing to hide. And little by little, that small house that was once just hers transformed into our home. Its walls held our laughter, our silences, our late-night conversations about life, our dreams, our fears, but above all, they held a truth I never wanted to let escape again. I learned that loving a woman didn't diminish me, didn't make me less. On the contrary, it made me whole, because for the first time, I allowed myself to be who I always was. And with her, I discovered that love isn't about perfection, it's about presence. It's about knowing that even on the hardest days, someone is there, holding your hand, reminding you that you are strong, that you deserve to be where you are. And so, day after day, fear gave way to courage, and pain transformed into peace. Today, when I look back, I see that lost woman, trying to fit her life into a mold that never suited her, and I feel compassion because I know how difficult it was, how lonely it was to carry that secret for so long. But I also feel pride in having chosen myself, in having found the strength to take a step that seemed impossible, and above all, gratitude. Gratitude for having found a love that, even amidst so much chaos, showed me who I truly am. And if you're listening to this story and feel that, in some way, it's about you, know that you are not alone, that it is possible to start over, even when everything seems lost, that loving isn't wrong when it's true. And if this account has touched your heart, leave a comment. Do you believe that true love has the power to transform us? If you're not yet subscribed to this channel, take this opportunity to subscribe now. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that it's possible to live a love without fear, a true love. Because in the end, life is about this, having the courage to be who we are and to love without asking for